Infrastructure meeting to order, and our first order of business will be the approval of last month's meeting. Ooh, I'm down. I had it up, but now. I'd hold you. Need a motion? Motion by Mr. Rosenbaum, seconded by Terry. Vote. It's not out. Must have to refurbish. Refurbish it. It's just that little, I thought it was that little curly thing. Here's my refurbish. So, sorry to hold you up, people. Looking for that curl. Oh, I'm gonna hear it. Your microphone. There you go. It passes. Moving on for our informational items, Sanitary District, Brian Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we're a week into go live on our software conversion, our enterprise software. And it's going remarkably well, actually. As of this morning, we had 358 signups onto the portal. People signing up for e-statements and easy pay. So we don't even have the first round of paper bills out yet. So those are actually going out tomorrow. So we expect the soft launch that we had to really ramp up, but we wanted to work out all the kinks in the system, at least from a public-facing standpoint first. So that's been done. Our customer service staff has been trained in really like IT help desk almost at this point. So going well. Now we're into the internal launch of electronic timesheets and approvals and things like that. Finance is all carried over pretty easily. So that's underway. And in your packet, we have the July minutes. Just as we're doing a software conversion, we actually still have the rest of the enterprise running. So been a busy few weeks. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian. Moving on to our capital projects and funding sources.
Thanks,
Scott, you're going to handle this.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. You'll find that on pages 11 and 12 in the packet. Monthly report. Happy to answer any questions, or if there's something specific the committee would like to have us highlight, happy to do that. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Brian? Pardon me, Scott. No questions? Thank you, Scott. And the next one, we're going to have Wold, is it? Who is the representative from Wold?
Kyle, you want to tee this up?
Kyle, you're going to handle this. Okay. This is for our jail project that we know needs many things done. And Kyle, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So with us today, we have
principal, Matt Bickle, and he is here representing Wold. And they have put together a brief slide deck for you all, which he's going to go through right now in an effort to get this group kind of caught up with. We had convened a couple months ago an internal design group. And that group now, I'm on that group, the sheriff as well, and many of the sheriff's staff are on that group. We're 7 or so meetings in, and we think we've fleshed out a lot of different ideas and scenarios. And so, again, that's kind of the effort here today, is just to get all of you up to speed with the work that we have been doing up to this point. So with that, Mr. Bickle.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, members of the committee. As Kyle mentioned, here to give a brief update on the work of our design committee to date. We've been meeting for a couple months, and really, I think just to kind of provide a little bit of background for you all, I know you're aware, but the jail was originally constructed in 1983 with an addition in 1997. The kitchen, which is in the area here, is original to the 1983 construction. It was not expanded when the jail increased in size. It's about 4,000 and change square feet. And again, the existing equipment is aged and beyond its useful life expectancy in many cases. Staff has been doing a great job to keep on top of that. The most recent issue has been a dishwasher that has given the team fits as they've gone through several different attempts to have the contractor maintain that. And again, the existing layout is not supportive of the current dietary requirements or working conditions conducive for a correctional kitchen environment. The laundry is adjacent to the existing kitchen. It's in the orange. It is also original to the 1983 building and is about 650 square feet. The laundry is also the main loading and receiving area for the jail, and therefore deliveries cannot be received while trustees are in the laundry space. At the onset of any project, we work with our planning groups to establish guiding principles. These guiding principles are really the stated goals and beliefs for the project, and also the bumpers that we try to stay within as we advance design options. When we find things that bump up against these bumpers, that we go back to the group and say, are our guiding principles correct, or do we need to address those because we've found something in our solutions that suggests that maybe an alternative is the way to go. So our statements are about the kitchen. It should remain operational during construction of the new kitchen. Obviously, that's a significant piece to the construction and logistics of this project. We need to make sure that we have a plan in place for continuing to serve meals throughout construction. Otherwise, we need to plan for some type of alternative solution to make that happen. It should function entirely outside the jail's secured perimeter, including a detention-rated barrier between the jail and the kitchen. The idea here is that some years ago, the jail shifted to using a commercial food service vendor rather than in custody or folks in the kitchen environment. And so for this purpose, for the continued purpose, we want to make sure that there is a detention-rated barrier so that the kitchen staff can enter separately and not intermix with the jail population. Should have a dedicated delivery receiving space outside the jail's secured perimeter. For that same purpose, we want them to be able to go about their daily business without having to cross into the jail for deliveries, etc. And be constructed with detention-rated building envelope appropriate for a secure facility with a commercial-grade interior build-out to accommodate operations performed by commercial staff. The thrust behind that is, while we are today planning for a kitchen that's going to be operated by outside vendor, we don't know what the future will hold. And if there was a return to a philosophy of using in-custody folks or trustees in the kitchen environment in the future, We want the shell of what we're building to be able to be appropriate for that, with the idea that the equipment inside that shell would have to be upgraded at that time, but the major expense would obviously be the outside of the building being appropriate for a jail environment. Related to the laundry services then, again, needs to remain operational during construction of a new laundry, so we need to phase the construction so that we're not without laundry for some period of time, and be constructed to detention-rated requirements to accommodate operations performed by trustees. So again, in this instance, the jail does rely on those in-custody persons to perform laundry services. And lastly, the delivery and receiving area. We want to provide a dedicated secure space for receiving jail deliveries. Again, the fact that it currently coexists with laundry services is an inefficiency and is also a security issue. So with that background, we have worked with the group to program out the space needed to support the various functions that our project will include. As we talk about the jail, again, if we take sort of the high water mark of the sort of a worst case scenario in terms of average daily population of the jail, plus the fact that the jail is responsible for producing meals for the juvenile detention center across the way. We're targeting a kitchen that can handle about 350 to 400 meals per day. And so the equipment that has been inventoried and proposed for the kitchen needs to be able to support those operations, as do the food storage, so the cooler, the freezer, and the dry storage areas. In order to accommodate making this a standalone kitchen facility that can be staffed by outside vendors, we need to provide a break room, toilet rooms for those folks, a supervisor's office. Again, one of the major issues with the current kitchen is the fact that not only is it deficient and in need of a lot of TLC, the jail has kind of been through the cycle in terms of a couple different vendors. And really, one of the thrusts behind this project is it's going to create an environment that will be appropriate for those vendors to do the job that they are contracted to do, and really help with creating an environment that will support that and allow the county to maintain those vendors long term. In addition, the addition will house a kitchen loading dock area, again, to allow them to be able to take deliveries without encumbering the jail. And then it does include a mechanical electrical room. The idea there is both cost and challenges associated with connecting this kitchen to the existing mechanical electrical rooms within the jail. And looking out, there are significant infrastructure issues that need to be addressed in the coming phases of jail reinvestment. And so the decision or the discussion has been, let's separate the water, gas, sewer type connections for the jail addition into a separate room, rather than having to get into ceilings, get above walls, and do more disruptive work within the footprint of the jail to accomplish the same at probably a similar or higher price point. And so I'll point out that the kitchen addition that we're showing today is just over 6,000 square feet, about 6,300 square feet. That mechanical electrical room addition is an additional 800 square feet. In the footprint then of the existing kitchen is where our laundry services will go. That's about 2,200 square feet, which will allow us to increase the amount of washers and dryers that are currently located within the space to increase efficiency and properly size it for the quantity of laundry that's being processed on a daily basis. And then that existing laundry area will become a dedicated receiving area for the jail. There's a lot of information on this plan. This is a detailed drawing of the kitchen and food storage layouts here. Again, we've been working with our food service consultant, Stewart Design, along with the Sheriff's Office and their current vendor to make sure that we have a good workflow, a secure, safe workflow that accounts for all of the different types of dietary and meal prep requirements for a correctional kitchen. There's been a lot of dialogue about how those carts will be loaded with prepared meals and distributed out to the jail pods by correctional staff. And so on the previous slide, you will have noticed that there is sort of a secure vestibule between the kitchen and the jail. So the kitchen staff will be able to load up that vestibule with the carts that have the prepared meals on them. Correctional staff then will be able to come and receive those, bring them out to the pods, and then once the carts are done, bring them back, and they will be returned and processed through the dishwash areas. I will take a second here and talk about our food storage. So you'll see here that there's an overall food storage capacity increase of 132%. So as we've walked through and talked through the planning for this facility, one of the things that we recognized is that based on the current size of the cooler, freezer, and dry storage, the jail is currently receiving 4 deliveries of food per week. By slightly increasing the size of these things, we'll be able to hopefully reduce the number of deliveries. And the importance there is twofold. One, it is more efficient from a staff perspective. So the kitchen provider will have less time involved in breaking down deliveries and bringing those in. But two, each of these storage areas are sized to accept a pallet. And so when a delivery shows up, and the staff is mid-production in that day's meal or that hour's meal, that pallet will be able to be directly moved into the cooler, into the freezer, and into the dry storage area. That is, again, more efficient because it allows them to break it down when they get to it rather than at that time. And it's also better for food safety. Again, especially when we're talking about the freezer, being able to take those frozen items, put them right into the freezer, and break that pallet down later will be a significant benefit. And so that 132% increase accounts for fewer deliveries and better staging and storage of goods. Laundry area then, again, this will be sized to allow for the intake and outflow of laundry, throughout the week. We are sizing it with 3 washers and 3 dryers that are compatible. So you'll see on here that you have a 60-pound washing machine and then a 90-pound dryer. So that is basically clothes are about 30% wet or heavier when they're wet. So they'll be brought in on bins, they'll be sorted, they'll be weighed on the scale, they'll be put in the machines, and then put into the dryers. The rest of the space then is set up for folding tables. So once they're dried, they're responsible for folding them, putting them back in the carts, and getting them ready for distribution back out to the pods. There's a minimal amount of linen storage that we'll account for in the space, as well as we do need a small toilet area in here, as these are in custody folks. It would be inefficient for correctional officer to have to bring them back to a pod if they need to use the facilities while they're working in here. And then we have a significant amount of glass or glazing from that secure corridor, so that while trustees are in there doing their work, they'll be able to be supervised, or there'll be somebody will be able to quickly see what's going on within that space from the exterior. And then lastly, you'll note here there's a small TV lounge. So the idea here is once they've completed their work and are waiting to go back to their pod, we give them a small area to keep themselves entertained, so that they thus don't find other ways to keep themselves occupied. Real quickly from a site perspective, so again, we have the sort of the ring road that supports the existing loading dock area back behind the jail. We will connect to that with a new loading dock, trash receiving area. We will have also outside of the building a small enclosure for a generator and any other ground-mounted equipment associated with the addition. And then we will have some new parking stalls dedicated for our food service staff to enter the building. So they'll come in, they'll park. There's a staff entrance directly into the building that, again, allows them to access the jail without going through the jail. And similarly with the loading dock and waste management services, everything is self-sufficient with the addition. This addition goes directly, east of the existing jail, and we will have some slight modification of the existing perimeter fence to accomplish that. There's also some catch basins and a grease trap out in the open space here that will need to be relocated as part of the project to make this all come together. The existing loading dock then will remain in place and be dedicated for jail deliveries, and that's on this side here. As we've gone through the design process, a couple things that we explored, but in an effort to be as economical with this as we possibly could be, we ended up deciding not to pursue. The first was clear story windows. Clear story windows are high windows that would allow natural daylight into the space. There are no windows into the current jail, and again, as part of that effort to make this a good work environment for that contracted staff, we wanted to bring natural daylight in. The cost of that clear story or those high windows was significant, and so a decision was made to instead go with skylights over the kitchen area. A second element was a mechanical penthouse. And so across the jail, most of your air handling units, rooftop units are located within penthouses. You'll see an existing one here. That helps on the maintenance of the equipment, right? If it's indoors, it will inevitably last longer, easier to service. But that's extra square footage and extra cost to the project. And as we walked through it, in terms of sort of other things that will need to be on top of the roof in terms of condensing units for our freezer and cooler, exhaust hoods for the cooking equipment, it became sort of apparent that just having a single penthouse for mechanical equipment didn't really solve our issues in terms of screening. And so we settled on a proposal to instead create a taller wall that will screen our equipment. We will still accentuate what is the northeast corner of the building with a little bit taller wall to screen our rooftop equipment and also allow us to incorporate that circular louver feature that is exhibited across other penthouses across the jail area. I'm getting close to the end and then happy to answer some questions. So back in 2005, when the county studied this previously, they were looking at a kitchen addition only. That did not include the laundry upgrades, or at least it was not budgeted as part of the same exercise. And that exercise also did not contemplate creating a new mechanical and electrical plant to serve the addition. Rather, it would tie into the existing mechanical electrical plant. And again, at that time, it forecasted construction in 2026. So in 2025, you were looking at an all-in budget for just the kitchen, without the mechanical room and without the laundry upgrades, of about $8.6 million. Working with our team at PJ Hare, we have developed a budget for the current project, and I'm happy to report with the decisions that have been made by the planning group. We have been able to, I think, get a lot more for a comparable price. So we are getting the kitchen addition plus the laundry remodel plus the associated site work for an all-in cost here of $8.5 million. I will point out on the previous slide that total project cost also included the architectural costs. The architectural costs are not reflected here, but that's approximately another $500,000. So we're at about $9 million for a kitchen, laundry, and site work project versus 8.6 for just the laundry project a couple of years ago. My last slide here is just where we are in terms of the schedule. Again, we've been at this for a couple months now. Started in late May. We are getting near the end of our design stage and ready to move into the contract documents phase, where we are putting together the formal drawings for bidding and construction. Looking to get this out to bid sometime late this year or early next year, with the goal of being able to present a project ready for construction and award of contracts at that time, and looking then to construct this starting sometime spring of next year, possibly sooner. There is some inside work that obviously can be done to prepare us, but as you think about the plan, largely it's going to be the site work and the expansion that needs to happen first to allow us to then move through the project in phases and keep those elements online until the replacement parts are ready. With that, I covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. I will gladly answer any questions.
Questions?
I couldn't help but notice on my tour out there, been a while, but the kitchen ceiling is strikingly low, and I wonder if that presents any problems for the laundry going into that space.
The ceiling itself is a drop ceiling, so we do have plenum space above there that we'll be able to recapture for creating the laundry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Coach. Scott, refresh my memory back to our initial estimates. Wasn't our initial estimates for a standalone building to be $6 million all in?
That was, excuse me, that was a very preliminary number that the planning team last year, before we retained Wold, had thrown out. They're using, what they thought construction would be at $1,000 a square foot, but also, as I think, back up to that slide. One more. Yeah. So we had it's 5.3 was construction cost for just the kitchen. So pretty close to that, Mr. Dillon, but I think what we've seen here is, as the teams put things together, it's a more accurate reflection of what is needed without really seeing any scope creep. I would argue that we've worked hard to avoid scope creep for this phase of the project.
So what would be in the 1.7 soft costs? I mean, that's more than typical contingency. Or is that the soft cost count?
Together, but soft costs would typically include all of your engineering and design fees, any geotechnical, site surveying, construction testing, contingency.
Engineering's already been paid for, though, correct, Scott?
Well, when we calculated the numbers that are up on the screen here, that was before we had retained a designer to actually do design development and do construction documents. So that number was always a potential or a likely cost.
No, but from a perspective, that money's already been budgeted and spent. We hired Wold
Right.
for this year budget. So from a perspective of looking at that, that's costs that we've already paid for, incurred, a majority of.
Correct. And it's, I think Wold's services are going to, for this phase, are going to come in less than that, but that soft cost has other things in it than just A&E fees. So it'll have, bring the next slide back up, of course. So it'll have, in that number is going to be the GL insurance, the permit, the bond, the builder's risk, and contingency and overhead and profit for PJ. So you add up all those things plus Wold's fees, we're pretty close. It's 1.7 versus 1.8. Because you said there was another $500 or so in your fees.
Well, not to try to dominate, but there would be no 54,000 for a building permit, considering
Yeah.
we are the
Correct.
agency.
Yes.
So, and if somebody else has questions, please step in. So, Matt, can you explain how we go from, so I understand the concepts, because anybody looking at it, when you go from a 4,000 square foot to 6,500 and 800 to over 2,000 square foot, why are we at the square foot? It makes sense when you look at the plan itself where it shows out the layouts from everything, but that just seems like an exuberant amount of square footage space, more than needed.
Sure. I think I'll take them one at a time. So as we talk about the kitchen, right, we're growing from 4,000 square feet to 6,000 square feet. Again, as I explained, a significant piece of that is the upsizing of the storage, so your freezer, cooler, and dry storage areas. But it's also in the square footage that we are adding, not only to support the full complement of kitchen equipment that's necessary for serving 350 to 400 meals a day, or a meal, I should say. But it's also part of the creating that more appropriate environment for contract vendor to come into. So we do have to have toilet rooms, the office, the break room, which are things that exist in some capacity today, but are significantly undersized. So I think the consistent theme across your existing kitchen is that everything you have today is just too small. And when you add all those pieces up, you do increase the programming for the kitchen itself. Mechanical electric room, I think, again, that concept, pretty much explains itself, right? Because we're putting it in the addition and not relying on the existing facility, that square footage is a cost to the building. However, again, I think through our analysis, that extra 800 square feet is equivalent to what you would probably spend in trying to connect this to the existing building. And the added layer of complication there is you're not exactly sure what it is that you're connecting to in terms of the longevity of the project. And so without advancing the other infrastructure improvements to the jail simultaneously, we don't know what things will be offline, online, in the future. And so from a cost and schedule standpoint, including the mechanical electrical room in the building addition presented itself as is the most straightforward approach to that solution. The last piece is the laundry. And I guess in full transparency, the laundry itself, if you look at that plan, the increase in square footage, it's generous, right? The problem is that that's the square footage that we have to work with in terms of the footprint of the kitchen that's being departed, right? And so we've looked at several options for what other use of that space could we create? Could we take some of the space from the addition and put it into that space? One of the challenges that we have is that with the expansion of the building, we are exceeding the allowable square footage of the building that allows us to do that without going back in and changing how the code plan for the existing building is generated. So that's all to say is between the existing building and our new building, we're going to have a fire pit. And so anything that we do in the existing building that wants to communicate with the addition is going to have rated doors and be served by fire dampers or smoke dampers, and doesn't really gain us a lot of efficiency from a floor plan perspective. And so in our most recent meetings, we've looked at options for putting some of those toilet rooms in there, seeing if we could get that to shrink the footprint of the addition. And we also looked at options for decreasing the dry storage and freezer and cooler space we were saving tens of thousands of dollars, not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and sacrificing efficiency and just adding complexity to the construction. That at the end of the day, nobody felt really good about those.
So maybe that, Matt, leading into that, have Mr. Sutherland. So no offense, Wold is fantastic. This is a great presentation, but when you sometimes tell engineers and architects what you want, I just want to know that we have the construction team. The reason we did the CM model plus this is to have some value engineering so that we're not stunned on, and these prices are correct being given to us. So unfortunately, we don't live in a world where we have unlimited money to do this and we're on a budget. So I'm just trying to understand to make sure that these are accurate numbers and that the CM team has been, these are accurate, because this is our first presentation from Wold, but we've been given presentations in the past, and sometimes the A&E firms' numbers don't hit reality. So not saying yours, but
Yeah,
just
no, absolutely. So all of these numbers that you're seeing here were provided.
So we've attended every design meeting, every one of the counties meetings. We've been looking at ways to cut back on costs. The clear story windows was one. We've done a pricing exercise to see what that savings would be. The same thing on the penthouse. We've looked at options of maybe converting some of the existing space where the laundry's going for restrooms and other space, and just trying to go back and forth to see what is the best bang for the buck for the county. And then in this is $740,000 in contingency that's in this cost, because right now we're pricing off of what you see. So as we get further in the design and we get more detailed drawings, we'll refine those costs and they'll get more accurate as we continue through this process.
one more random question. So, and then this will be something I imagine will be asked at some point. So we always ask ourselves needs versus wants. And so skylights, I know that's a nice added value, but are we talking that's a $200,000 added value to have skylights and have the possibility of, I mean, most people that have skylights lead to more issues potentially. So just walk me through the skylights. I know we tried to save money off the windows, but
Yeah, so the skylights are maybe a fourth of the cost of the windows. So significant decrease in overall cost, and just trying to be able to get natural light in as a way to help recruit and maintain workers there in the kitchen.
I think it's a valid question, though, and as we move forward, I think currently we're showing 12 or 14 skylights, and as the PJ team, refines their budgets moving forward, maybe that's something where we say, well, 14 would be great, 8 would be good enough, right? So those types of things. Our process is one where, we are working side by side with our CM partners, so that in real time we're having those discussions about the cost of certain things, the availability of certain materials, the availability of certain labor groups, so that when we get to it, is there suddenly an advantage over with going with precast over masonry, right? We'll want to talk about that and make sure that as we get closer to bid day, where all of those things we're making the most economical and best long-term decisions we possibly can.
Any more questions? Marcia?
So Jimmy has lots of construction experience. I myself, and probably a few more on the board that necessarily on this committee, don't have near as much, right? So when he's talking, for example, the skylights, give us some numbers. Can you please give us the numbers, what the cost of the skylights versus no skylights, the cost of 8 skylights versus 14. Is that possible? Something,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's simple, but it's going to help those of us who don't know anything about construction have some basis?
So the cost of the skylight's about $5,500 a piece.
Okay.
So in the whole overall scheme of things, not a huge amount.
Right. But I mean, so we can, to have that something to look at in the presentation would, I don't know if you're going to be doing this again, but just, to make it simpler for those of us who don't have a lot of construction experience. And then also, the addition of the freezers, the cooler, and the storage. And I know this isn't going to be your field of study, so to speak, but the savings that would be received on, the fewer shipments, so then buying bigger shipments, buying, bigger packaging, so to speak. Is there any way we could have some sort of estimate on savings that we would realize due to reduced costs there by buying in bigger bulk of things? Because everybody knows if you buy bulk, it's cheaper, right? So
Yeah.
and I know, like I said, it's not really your thing, but I don't know.
I think when it really becomes evident is when you reopen your food service contract. Because what they will do is they will give you a price based on the way they will deliver the food service to you. And so the cost savings of fewer trips, which is there's no such thing as free delivery. When they say there's free delivery, that just means it's baked into the cost of the goods. And so when they're delivering 4 times a week versus 3 times a week versus 2 times a week, you are paying more for that over time. And so then it's really a matter of the food service vendor passing that savings along to the county when you bid that contract.
Mr. Rulon, you had your hand up also. Okay, thank you. Mr. Rosenbaum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On skylights, my question is, okay, they're going to get dirty, correct? I mean, when it rains and stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so do we have to have somebody go up there and clean them every week, every month, stuff like that, or they won't get cleaned? I'm just trying to, a lot of stuff sounds nice, but then we forget about the upkeep on it. And really doesn't make that much difference to have skylights versus with new lighting that they have nowadays. Wouldn't it be better to put more efficient lighting in the kitchen and not worry about the skylights and having to keep inside with cobwebs? I mean, we all know spiders get in everywhere.
Sure.
And who's going to be cleaning that? Who's going to be cleaning the outside? And our job is to be the devil's advocate and look at it. And I know it said only $5,500 per skylight, but that's $77,000. $77,000 will pay an employee for a year or close to it. So that's taxpayers' money. So our job is to make sure that we, not that we don't want it to be a nice or an efficient, nice facility, but we also aren't building the Taj Mahal. So these are some of the questions we have.
Absolutely, they're very fair questions, and not to make light of it, but I will for just a second. We need to provide natural daylight to the people in the jail. So I think the people working in the kitchen at the jail, some access to natural daylight is a nicety. Certainly, modern lighting is a lot better than lighting of yesterday. But we just know that from creating a better work environment for folks, access to natural daylight does a lot of great things in terms of reducing the amount of sick days that people have, and the amount of stuff that goes along with that. That's not to say that we need to have skylights. It's just that's the argument for why we think that they're possibly important. In terms of the maintenance of them, I think that for this project, we haven't gotten to this level of discussion yet, but I would actually probably advocate for what's called a translucent skylight versus a transparent skylight. The thing with skylights versus the clear story windows that we were providing is that they're not the best from heat gain and glare, right? Because instead of having windows that we can have some sort of overhang or controlled shades or whatever, skylights are just holes in the ceiling that let light in. And so a translucent skylight is going to do two things. One, it will make it a little less evident to when it needs to be cleaned, and then two, it will help that glare effect by diffusing the light as it's got brought into the space rather than having it be direct sunlight. And so to answer your question, any building, jail or other that we put skylights on, do they from time to time need to be cleaned? Yes, that is really just a user preference, I would say. It's maybe once or twice a year that it probably is recommended, but more or less based on preference.
Any more questions? Marcia?
So you made the statement about the inmates require daylight. I wasn't aware of that. Okay. So does the skylights then tie into the idea that at some point this kitchen may once again be worked by inmates? Is that kind of tying in with that a little bit and adding, so would it be beneficial to go ahead and consider the skylights, because at some point we don't want to get to where we have to put them in afterwards if the inmates are working in there for extended periods of time because of the daylight requirement.
Yeah. So that access to natural daylight really is more so where they are living, right? And it's not it's not that everybody has a window, but they usually have some sort of sight line to exterior outside someplace. It's not a requirement for where they spend every minute of their day. So rec areas and kitchens and those things aren't required to have windows. But to your question, it would again improve the environment. Yes.
Jim?
Matt, I just want to compliment you today for well done on the presentation and handling the questions. And John, appreciate you answering questions too. That was much appreciated by this board member for you being able to answer that and show this. And my questions were more in line of just, I think this shows the value of the model that we built, having Kyle and Scott and then hiring PJ to work with Wold on this to help try to keep in line, because as everybody here knows, I mean, we have no shortage of projects. This doesn't even solve the fleet garage or the other things that we've hired Wold to look at the jail, from the mechanical systems and everything else that we have there. So I think any question you get and concern of design or cost wise is just the board understanding the fact of this is one project of a multitude of other projects that we need to tackle with not a ton of revenue to try to pay for that. So, but well done presentation.
Thank you.
No further questions. Terry?
More of a comment than a question, but I want to go on the record as supporting the concept of these skylights because it's obviously spurred some questions. I do know that in food preparation, hospitality, restaurants, the number one problem that any of those owners would tell you, and I'm sure the people who manage the kitchen at the jail is no exception, but finding people to work, the turnover, the constant turnover is an absolute nightmare for the people who manage those spaces. So if a little daylight could take the place of having to overpay to get somebody to work in there. If you haven't taken a tour of the current kitchen, it is dark, it is low, it is humid all the time because we're cooking with steam. It's a terrible place to work, and it's a miracle we can find anybody to go in there at this point. So a little daylight, a little flexibility in their work schedules, whatever we can do to lure good people into that environment, I'm all for it. And in the long run, it probably saves us money if we can limit the amount of turnover in employees in that building.
Mr. Rowland, thank you for that observation. Those are some worthwhile comments. Okay, Sheriff?
A few comments. The first thing is on the size wise. We saw that size, that footprint was very big initially too. We've spent a lot of time on how we can condense that footprint, but also just keep in mind when they built that kitchen back in '82, it was on the first part of the jail. So back in '98, when they did expand it for a couple more 100 beds, they never did anything to the kitchen. So that's one of the reasons why that kitchen is so big. We've run a couple scenarios where we made the coolers a little bit smaller where they couldn't fit the pallets in. But once again, what we found out in operations wise, they would just leave the door open for half hour or hour and just slowly start reloading between cooking and everything else, the coolers. So actually being able to put it in the size where they can wheel the pallet in and then close the door, do what they're doing, and then come back an hour later and unload the pallet while they're still in the cooler or freezer is a big deal, efficiency wise and all that. So I mean, we have really went through this any way we can cut costs where we've cut some costs. So I just want to make that point. Size wise it looks big, but even the costs are. Our jail study that we did 2 years ago, they wanted us, one of the scenarios was to add on to the existing kitchen, which we did not like because I would have to, where are we going to prepare 1,000 meals a day at? We would have to have a mobile kitchen come in, and that is an operational nightmare. So that's where we're kind of leaning on to building a kitchen next to the existing kitchen because our operations are so tight right now that if you throw a big wrench like that in, I don't really know how we can operate. So that's kind of where we leaned on this idea. And definitely the retention, Terry, you nailed it. Our kitchen service provider is a huge turnover right now. They're having managers come in from Chicago to come in and fill in. Even in like our dishwasher is out of date. We're always working on it. Keeping someone full-time dishwasher, like you have to be able to buy one that makes their job easy. Just the little things like that, because once again, if they can't hire a dishwasher or preps, the manager is going to quit. So now they have to pull a manager in from corporate. It's just that domino effect that we've seen in corrections and everything else. So making the kitchen's job easier is going to help with retention. And then when we do put out that for bid, hopefully those prices come down a little bit cheaper. Because they know they're coming into a new kitchen where they can retain people, and they're not cutting through the jail, which is a big thing right now. All of our employees are cutting through the jail to get to the kitchen because they have to. We have no other way to do that. In Walden, PJ Hare's been awesome to work with. I've been in every meeting. This is a great experience we've had. Very long. I've learned more than I've ever wanted about construction, but between Kyle, Melissa, and everybody, I think I'm telling you, this will be a good project, and cost savings is definitely our number one priority. Thanks.
I've not been on it very much, but I'm glad there's so much cooperation. It sounds good anyway. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, thank you for coming up and saying what you said, because in past experiences, we always have engineering firms come in and give us the great thing, knowing that you're working with them and you're getting the best bang for our buck, makes it a lot easier. Granted, I haven't been in the kitchen, know what it looks like, and so I'm going by what everybody says, and you stepping up here and telling us that why we need what we need, and that helps make the decision so much easier. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you for the reports and for many of the comments by various board members. Okay, we're going to move on with Kyle. He's going to handle the Ring Road report to us today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, staying out at the jail, a lot of action out there, as I'm sure the sheriff would attest to. So I have before you, initially this was going to be a resolution, and I think Scott may still have some recommendations as we get deeper into this here. We moved it over to an informational item. Miss Cordes Boswell, she had some additional financial questions that she wanted me to follow up on within both the PJ Hare contract as it relates to the Ring Road project, and then the core contract as it relates to Courtroom 321 project, which will be coming up next. Since that time, I have been able to do so, follow up on the Ring Road project. I'm not going to speak for you. I think we're in agreement at this point, but basically it was going back and reviewing some of their contract to make sure we had set their allowable overhead and profit at the correct rate for a project of this size, and then also just verifying some hourly wage rates for some of their personnel, which we were able to do as well. So the project itself, this is the third and it'll be the final phase for the Ring Road out there. So we did phase 1 in 2024. That was completed by Stark. And then phase 2 was last year in 2025. That was completed by Knapp. And so we put out this year for the third and final phase. We also were able to sweep into this the employee parking lot at the jail, which was also a priority for the sheriff. And even something as simple as an employee parking lot helps to get back at some of that employee well-being, happiness, and retention aspect of what we're trying to do here. So we were able, working with our internal county procurement and finance personnel, we were able to put this project out to bid. As you can see here in your bid tab, we did receive 6 qualified bids. With the low on the base bid was ICCI, and so it would be our recommendation to move forward, awarding the low bid to ICCI, and then there also was space within the budget to pick up an alternate bid as well that we were able to fold in there. Would be happy to entertain any questions moving forward. Administrator Sorrell, yeah, I don't know if you have something to add to that.
Yeah, Kyle, thank you. I think, Mr. Chairman, depending on how the committee's wishes are based on the discussion for this item today, we would ask that we look at having a special committee meeting the day of the board meeting so that we could get the resolution before you and get it to the board for contract award in 2 weeks. Contract award in 2 weeks is critically important from a construction schedule standpoint if we want this project to get underway this year. And then Kyle, you can talk about what the construction schedule is and how long this might take to complete.
Sure. So as far as construction schedule, again, it really is kind of dependent upon this getting to the full board for approval at your next meeting, which would be September 10th. We would then PJ Hare contract would be signed with them. They would in turn get ICCI under contract, and we would begin right away. The projections right now, we would look to be finished with this project before the end of the year. Again, that's assuming some favorability with weather. But again, since we are doing this project out of concrete, I do think we
we can get a bit deeper in the year than we would otherwise if we were using asphalt. So again, with a September, assuming we leave here feeling favorably today and we go to the larger board and be approved with that September 11th essentially start date, we would see a narrow glide path to get this project completed before the end of this calendar year.
Do we want to make it at 5:15, 5:30?
We can pull the numbers to see what a good time would be, Mr. Chair.
Committee.
Right now we don't, but you're the first committee of the week, so we'll see.
Okay. So we'll be notified in regards to our time of that special meeting. Any questions for Kyle? Thank you, Kyle.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, we have our first resolution, which is a intergovernmental agreement, and we need a motion on that. What? Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. I want to get through. Okay, we have another informational item pointed out by our legal counsel. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The courtroom. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So this is kind of second verse similar to the first. This is, if you'll recall, we are under a construction management agreement with PJ Hare for essentially every county-owned site that is not within the courthouse block. And so then alternatively, we have a similar arrangement with Core Construction for everything that is within the courthouse block. So Core Construction has been our construction management firm for the Plaza project. And now this project that is before you right now is an informational item. This is for the renovation of courtroom 321 and some of the adjacent spaces, hallways, jury deliberation room, some of the other complementary uses up there on the third floor. And again, this was working with our procurement and our finance department. This project was put out to bid as well with three main trade partner packages. And so the bid results for those are, all of the bid results for those are included within your packet. But the general trades package, the low qualified bid on that was D. Joseph Construction. For the HVAC package, the low on that was PIPCO. And then for the electrical package, it was Fleming Electrical, which is, they've done a considerable amount of work here lately at the courthouse. They were the ones that did, they were the subcontractor for the plaza for all of the electrical work. And so similarly, we were able to have a discussion with legal representation. We went back and were able to scrutinize the contract that was signed in April of 2025 with Core Construction. The numbers that they have provided do check out. Their overhead and profit allowance is 3% per the contract. They do also have wage rates included within their contract that are set. Those were set in April of 25 when the contract was signed. The rates that they did give us for this project that are included in your packet, they are higher than that. There was an escalator that they have apparently added for 2026. So we do need to go back and get that cleaned up. But again, I believe if this group is amenable, once that is cleaned up and we would be able to have legal counsel sign off on that, we would look to bring this project back to you for a formal vote as well prior to the next board meeting so that we could, again, start
get started on this before the end of the year. The total project for this, again, referencing your packet, is we're looking to establish a guaranteed maximum pricing of $1,050,285, and there was 1.2 million budgeted within the capital fund for this project itself. And so within that space, you'll see there were several alternate bids in here that we were able to go ahead and accept all of those because the pricing did come in favorably. The alternates were the jury deliberation room, the server room, and then adding some additional air conditioning capabilities to said server room. So with that, I would entertain any additional questions. The discrepancy that we have as far as labor rates in here, we're in around the neighborhood of about $5,000. So again, not tremendous savings, but to the point that was made several times earlier throughout the presentation, we are trying to be as mindful and economical of our resources as we can be.
Jim?
So on that, talking about, so I'm just trying to understand the numbers here. So you have D. Joseph at 450, 60 for Pipco for HVAC, Fleming at 206. Yet then when I come back here, I mean, we have the base bid. So are we adding cores fees into that base bid that's being on this core document to the 897?
For the core document, it doesn't have a page number, but for the
Page
for the CM courtroom 321 renovation for the control estimate, you'll see that their charges are assessed in there for the base bid, and then each subsequent alternative as well at the contracted percentages.
So is that the document? So I'm just trying to get to the page. It's an email.
Yes,
Where it's
that's
$167,000.
yes, that's their general conditions costs.
So let me just wind this back though. So, but basically, project superintendent 720 hours. So that is basically 4.5 months of having there somebody full time. So we're gonna have. But if we've hired D. Joseph, we're basically having somebody there full time to babysit them as a superintendent, even though D. Joseph would run that project with their own superintendent. These costs seem way higher than overall than what we should be paying by this. By like seeing PJ's numbers on a separate thing, this doesn't seem as laid out. And maybe it is on that bigger document, but you can't really read that document on this.
It is a similar layout for each, the PJ project and the core project, and this is the way that these projects are being led. And so some of this has to do with, some of this can get back to these construction management firms having the ability to self-perform. Some of this gets back to these construction management firms. If these projects were run differently to where the county wasn't bidding out each sub-package, I do think there may be some different results.
So on a project like this, and this may be where we need to revise the model. So like where we just went through a very good model of a CM, a small courtroom model, this seems excessive for CM in it.
These are the rates that
I'm not saying,
contract.
I'm not saying that those might not be the rates that were agreed upon, but when we have a $600,000 courtroom remodel and we have $160,000 in management fees on top of that, that's where we don't have enough money to. Smaller projects, I think the intent was potentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, was hiring back into the full-time facilities portion where we traditional route where we hard bid, base bid, hire A&E firm put it out for a hard bid like this one similar was. And maybe that's consistent, but that just seems, and maybe these aren't won't be the final numbers, but
Yeah, Mr. Dillon, you're correct. I think the differentiating point is that we haven't defined, or we never defined what that break point was between is a project too small for a CM to be a CM project, or is it big enough that it needs to be a CM project? Versus if it's too small, then we're just managing it ourselves. We never define it, and I guess to your point, that gets to your point that maybe we need to reevaluate the model because we never defined what that break point was between what we're going to do ourselves and what we're going to have Core do or PJ do.
so I think part of that was that we had the $7 million project outside. We needed to have that, but when it came down to smaller projects in the courthouse, we were not going to run everything underneath the CM model. Currently, everything on the West Campus and some of those things that we've needed that it's worked. I think we need to evaluate each basically to what you said. It wasn't intended to have everything go underneath that scope. It was intended for larger projects, the ARPA dollars to finish it out, to have those contracts ready to go. This just seems on a courtroom remodel. We've done a ton of courtroom remodels and we've paid 600 some thousand. This was the idea of having a full-time facilities director in the budget and paying for itself for that. So I think on future ones, contractually, this might be what it is, but this does not need to be ran underneath the CM model.
Jerry?
I'm in agreement with Chairman Dillon that this does look substantially top-heavy, and I'm wondering how difficult it might be for us to go backwards to the exterior remodeling project and compare these as a percentage basis of the overhead costs that were applied to that as opposed to this one courtroom. It just does look substantially lopsided here. So I think there should be some place where we can make some kind of a comparison, whether it's the outside courtyard, some other project where we've used this model.
I don't know. Are they paying the contracts out to the subcontractors? Mm-hmm. So they're holding the contracts?
Yes.
So that's why we're paying for a project accountant.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And to the administrator's point, I mean, I think this has been, perhaps tacitly discussed, but there's never been anything concrete. But like, for example, the renovation of the HHS garage, I mean, that was not run through the construction manager agreement. I mean, that was a $65,000 or $70,000 project. But I mean, this courtroom 321 project is just from the standpoint of scheduling and operations and making sure everyone's where they need to be and security clearances, and a lot of this is going to be overtime work. This is a relatively complex project.
And Mr. Chairman, I think we've heard the discussion today, and I think for future projects, we will evaluate whether or not we need the CM model or not.
And listen, and I'm saying this in all due respect. I love Core, I love PJ, and that but we did not also hand out lifetime contracts for handling CM on all facilities in that scenario. And I think they understood that when they were getting in, that these were set projects to handle. That doesn't mean that everything now at the courthouse is exclusively Core. When you look at Bishop Brothers and Mid-Illinois and other contractors that have historically worked here for years have done it as a straight bid contract, and they've always worked out fine. So I just think going forward, nobody's fault, nobody whatever. It's just something that we'll have to revisit. And if we're looking to do CMs full for buildings, we should have them like every other contracts where, in 3 or 5 years, you have to reapply to see if you stay in that. That's my only point. These aren't lifetime deals, and this seems like a small enough project, and maybe I'm undercomplicating it, but we've done this before without having those fees.
Understood.
Okay, we're ready to move on. All right, our only resolution today has to do with the intergovernmental agreement, and we need a motion on that. Motion by Betty, seconded by Marcia.
Good afternoon. This is in relation to an agreement, intergovernmental agreement that the board made with the village of Chillicothe back in June. This is related to the viaduct over Illinois 29 that is at the north end of Chillicothe. Village of Chillicothe has been after getting that viaduct replaced for quite some time. They've been working with IDOT, and IDOT has acquired $1 million worth of funding to do this phase one engineering. What the phase one will do is decide how big the bridge needs to be, how wide the road needs to be, and the limits. IDOT's very busy. They have a huge program right now, and they don't have the time to do the engineering themselves. And they thought Chillicothe would be better off suited to be the project manager for the project. Chillicothe does not have that availability, and so through communications and decisions being made, it was chosen for the county to be the project manager for this, essentially. Once, assuming the board approves this agreement, we will have IDOT executed on their end, and then we will put out an RFQ, do a quality-based selection to get a consultant. Before we do that, I would probably reach out to Mr. Rulin and have a meeting with the stakeholders in Chillicothe and whoever else down there would like to have a say to determine what we would like to see or what the group would like to see in the design before we go out for bids or go out for qualifications for the consultants. We have okay, here's which project's going to be, give us qualifications, and then we would select that and start the engineering. Eventually there would be a public meeting. There also be communication with the BNSF Railroad because it's their railroad over top of this thing. So there will have to be an agreement with the county and BNSF for them to review these items. All these fees for BNSF and the engineers will be 100% reimbursable up to $1 million. So we will absolutely make sure we don't spend a penny more than $1 million for those two agreements. So the ITA also is very, very firm in that this only pays for the engineering. It does not pay for any county time. So the county cannot charge IDOT for my time. That was part of the issue, I think, with Chillicothe taking it over. So my time, Amy's time, anybody else's time in the county that works on this project, we will not be reimbursed from IDOT. So the $1 million is only for hiring a consultant and anything we owe BNSF for the agreement. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, how much time do you think you and Amy and your crew will have to put on this? Just a ballpark.
I don't know. 3 months total, maybe. I really don't know. It just depends on how intensive the meetings are, how much communication we have to have with BNSF. If we hire the right consultant, they're going to do the heavy lifting, and I'll just have to shuffle back and forth and get reimbursement from IDOT and things like that. Yep.
Any other questions? Vote. I'm in trouble. Resolution passes. Moving on to the next item, public comment. Seeing no public comment, call for miscellaneous, and Mr. Kelch.
I'd just like to give a shout out to Administrator Sorrell, Kyle, and Kelvin. Many of you don't know they had a big blowout on internal drains in this courthouse last, 10, 12 days ago on the rain down in the clerk's office of 2 inches of water down there. And they got it taken care of in 2 days. I was informed by Kyle while he was here. So I want to give a shout out to them to getting that taken care of.
Thank you. And I want everybody to know, of course, I'm back, but this is one committee that I never questioned having any problems and so forth, because I think we are a committee that we've got some of the best and knowledgeable people and experienced people on any committee that we have here in our county. And I appreciate, the work that you guys are all doing and contributing your worthwhile comments and so forth. Thank you very much. No other miscellaneous. Meeting is adjourned.